Call the port meeting to order at this time. Would you please call the roll, please, roll up. Showing that all council members are present, and we move forward with the prayer.
We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bounty blessings, especially for the parish natural resources. We pray for the protection of our parish, resident, and business during this hurricane season. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom. And we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We also pray that our government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish in honesty, humility, and equality for all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do that which is right. This I pray in Jesus' mighty name, and all God's children say, amen.
Amen. Mr. Trooper, lead us in the prayer and the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to take this moment of privilege to welcome everyone in the audience today for being a part of history. So this date, this time will go down in history in Plaquemine Parish. So please make sure you have your memorabilia and you sign whatever you can sign to keep you in touch as being part of history in Plaquemine Parish. Okay, at this time, any executive sessions? No. None. Proclamations?
There are none.
None. Status report?
Status report by the Executive Port Director.
Paul? Yes. Paul is taking this. Go ahead.
Testing? Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Matthews, Deputy Port Director. Sorry that Mr. Sanders could not be here today. He's actually in Illinois meeting with the governor and lieutenant governor of that state to discuss opportunities with prospective customers that are meeting with them as well, possibly moving their facilities and operations to Plaquemines. But today is a historic day, and I want to thank Mr. Bartholomew, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership in having this day come through fruition. And so we greatly appreciate that. I understand that I was supposed to be here a little bit earlier and had a role, but I think it probably went well even without me. So I know you guys had a good time, and so we're glad to have this day here at the seat of the parish. So great to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things to report for this August 8th, 2019. Obviously, as a port staff, we are very much excited that Mr. Sanders is moving forward with the contract and renewing his contract for the next 3 years. We've been working very hard, and we want to thank Chairman Bartholomew again for his leadership in that process. We look forward to continuing our efforts as a port, and frankly, we really have a staff that's made up of roughly 43 of us that I believe that is really second to none. Frankly, pound for pound, we have a great staff that punches above its weight class. It's diverse in demographics, it's diverse in experience, and in thought. And so I put up our staff against any other port staff in the state and the country of all the efforts that they are making. Also, we have great news from Washington, D.C. The port has been awarded more than $600,000 in port security grant funds. That's more than any other port in the state this year. And I want to give kudos to Donald Durr, who's our head of security and vessels, for leading that grant effort. And moving forward with that, since signing the CEA with the Greater Baton Rouge, we are now in the process of moving particular emergency assets to their Maritime Security Center in Baton Rouge. And Chrissy Nielsen and Dallender are leading those efforts. Venture Global is having an environmental scoping meeting, which is to be open to the public at Bell Chase Auditorium on August 12th from 4:30 through 7:30 p.m. It is critical for the community to show its public support or input regarding the Delta LNG development, which is separate from the Plaquemines LNG development, which we anticipate construction beginning in December. This is the second part of their full build out here in Plaquemines. So it moves from an $8.5 billion investment to $17 billion. So this is just part of their process regarding the Delta LNG facility. And so when both facilities are built out, Plaquemines Port will actually be the largest LNG exporting port in North America. So pretty sporty with that. Furthermore, construction permit for Plaquemines LNG facility is being submitted this week. We want to thank Mike Metcalf and permitting, also President Lapine and Rennie Beers and Lapine's administration for working with the port side by side to making sure that issues like this with our customers are moving forward through the process. And so we're just really grateful for working with the Lapine administration. So thank you, Mr. President. Over the past few weeks, Sandy and I have received a lot of inquiries by board members and even some people from the community regarding rights, powers, and privileges, the ability for the port to develop acquisitions and operations, et cetera. So what we've done is put a packet together, and we'll give it to you at the end of this meeting, which provides all the enabling statutes of the port along with the appropriate constitutional articles and sections so that you guys will have a hard copy of that. I know we sent that to you guys a couple times earlier this year, but just so you have a hard copy so that you can bring them to the meetings or have them at your desk as you work on port issues. Last Tuesday, I attended the World Trade Center Transportation Committee meeting and provided a port briefing. Among those agencies that attended the meeting, which include the Coast Guard, it includes Big River Coalition, all the pilot associations, all the ports on the lower Mississippi River. The main theme was to discuss the hurricane that wasn't. I heard Captain Branch of the Louisiana Maritime Administration call it Hurricane Barely, so I'm starting to use that one. The other issues that came up was the Mississippi River gauge is lowering now, which is beneficial to everybody, especially the Corps, being able to move forward on a lot of different projects. I think we're all appreciative of that. And then we also noticed that there was a great deal of ship calls that did not happen this year compared to last year. I believe it's a 12% difference year to date. So there's always speculation on why that is, but the facts are the facts are. So we're just hoping that the rest of the year we can have more ship calls for all the ports on the lower Mississippi River. Also want to wish all the students and teachers, back to school. Everyone is safe. In particular, we have to pray for our teachers, that they have patience and wisdom and strength. My wife's a teacher, so I know exactly how that goes, and I hear all the stories. So thank God for our teachers out there. So this Friday, we know it's first game of the Saints season. It's been a few months since we've been back in the Dome, and we don't want to talk about the last game we had, but we got to move on this season. So we hope the Saints can have a good season. And to all my fantasy football players, here's my sleeper, Jared Cook, the tight end of the Saints. I'm going to pick him probably in the 5th or 6th round. So, that was free if you have a sleeper for your fantasy team. So with that, that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the table? Mr. Harborough?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the status report, I'm appreciative Sandy signed the contract, but it still troubles me as to what happened last board meeting. Without playing a play-by-play of what happened, I would like to ask ourselves a few questions. What trust is the board is Mr. Sanders supposed to have when it's the board's role to support him and his staff? What more motivation have we provided to him and his staff to perform their duties as they build this port? And most important, what message does this send to the business community or our prospective port customers on how we treat the leader of our port? As Mr. Black said last week, we have ample time and multiple meetings to discuss his contract, but the contract was modified at the table without any time for counteroffers to be made by Mr. Sanders. This is not the way we should do business. Even weeks later, I continue to receive comments by my constituents on how poorly we treated Mr. Sanders. In 6 short years, this port has made amazing strides under his leadership. His work speaks for itself, and I hope in 3 years we can do better. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Matthews, could you, in light on the trip to Baton Rouge that was saying to Mr. Sanders, as it relates to the port?
Sure. Mr. Sanders and I were invited by Mr. Black to attend a meeting with the Secretary of Transportation earlier this week, and the idea that the possibility of maybe the port being involved in the PPP process and maybe being the P in the public side as opposed to the private to be the port. And so we went to basically as a fact-finding mission to see if there's even a possibility. Would it be a benefit to the people of the parish? Would it be a benefit to all of us? Would it be a smooth process? So we listened to the Secretary of Transportation as, Mr. Black asked different questions of what options could there be. And frankly, we were there just to do some fact-finding. And after the meeting was over, there was nothing really settled in the meeting, and it was just for information purposes. So with the Secretary of Transportation, without losing any confidentiality, it was mostly, I think, at the end of the day, we're at the same place we were the day before.
All right, thank you very much for your report. Mr. Russo?
Following along that discussion, the intention, or at least the correspondence that we saw, was to take and put the port in the place of plenary. Would that mean that the port would be collecting tolls to pay off the bonds, or how would that work?
Well, we don't know exactly. That's why we're looking at all the options of what could it be, if it could save the parish, tens of millions of dollars, whether toll or not. That was not a discussion that we were necessarily saying one way or the other. We just want to look at what all the options were. What we know as a port is that the port has the right to construct a bridge, to operate a bridge, to maintain a bridge. If it saw fit to charge anyone who went onto the bridge, they could do so as well based on our enabling statutes. But there was no decision of what we wanted to do. We wanted to find out what could be done, essentially. So there was no decision from the port or opinion from the port of how it should be done. We wanted to find out what could be done.
Well, I realized there was no opinion from the port because we didn't know you were gone to start with. Second of all, the bonds or the financing mechanism would have to have some type of repayment method. So did you learn anything from that meeting on how or what possibilities there were to repay the bonds or the debt that would be incurred to build the bridge?
Yeah, I would defer to Mr. Black on that issue, if you may.
Yeah, so, we can talk about this now. We can talk about it on the next agenda with the council, but if you want to talk about it now, that's fine. Mr. Russo, I know you're looking for holes, and you're looking for me in the port to say that we're looking to toll the people. I get it. That's been your mantra from day one, like you said. So I'll say this. On Friday, kind of sat back and in my normal line of business, I've been involved in a movement of 4 major offshore platforms from Korea to Singapore to the Gulf of Mexico. I met with the railroad, and this is all via maritime transportation. I met with the railroad on Thursday about some other items. And I asked the question on whether or not they were planning on moving the existing rail bridge to Walker Road if the Walker Road project would go forward. And they said, yeah, they're considering that. So I said, well, that kind of gives a little bit of credence to the idea that I had. And I thought about over the last couple of weeks and kept it silent to myself because I wanted to make sure I did my due diligence and have a solution that was viable and not just some kind of made-up fantasy. So with that said, I asked for a meeting with with Paul and Mr. Sanders. And I asked them, and I was on Friday, and I asked them to provide me with some context of whether or not the port had the ability, like Paul just said, if we had the bonding capacity to come up with the money for the gap between the 90 million we have and the 160 proposal. I asked if we have the legal authority to build bridges and do such things to help commerce. They researched it, and yes, we did. And then I looked at the way that this council serves as the sole governing authority of the Port, Harbor, and Terminal District and said, well, we have the legislative ability as well to govern this particular thing. So I was going to be in Baton Rouge anyway on Tuesday, so I asked Sandy what his plans were on Tuesday, and he was actually having a meeting with, I think, CPRA, I'm not sure who, on Tuesday evening. So he called up Sean Wilson and asked for a meeting on my behalf, and we met up on Tuesday morning, and we met for about an hour and 45 minutes. And I gave him my proposal and said, hey, look, you know, what do you think about this? This is a possible solution that could meet the state's P3 requirement, meet the possible requirements of the INFA grant. And I think the president has already reached out to Sean Wilson to get a copy of the application for the INFA grant. So we wanted all that information, but I wanted to go to him face to face on behalf of the entire parish to say, here's some solutions, not just resolutions or whatever saying, we don't like your proposal. I actually went up there after doing a lot of homework and due diligence with a potential solution. And the solution was twofold, really. One of them was to actually buy the bridge or have the bridge, the current bridge, donated to us, to the port by the state. And the reason why I mentioned the movement of these platforms and the movement of the rail bridge, I said if we had enough money to build the 4 piers at Walker Road and relocate the top of the Belle Chase Bridge, and if you can take a look at it, you'll notice that structure actually sits on 4 piers. It's not one entire structure that's 70 foot tall or whatever it is. It sits on 4 piers. The state, I asked a question to Secretary Wilson if when they decommission bridges and stuff, that they sell those approaches to other municipalities for smaller bridges, and of course they do. So here's an opportunity maybe that the port could take out a $40 million bond. And I say $40 million, that's a rough estimate because the situation we have $90 million. We met with David Vitter. I had a subsequent meeting. I met with him yesterday, actually. Talked to Mr. Vitter, who's our ports lobbyist in Baton Rouge, to research the INFA grant. The administration's attorneys are going to research the INFA grant and see what's the tolling issue and how we can work it around. Maybe we have to have a congressional delegation in D.C. visit. However, it was to build 4 piers on Walker Road, have the demolition costs cut out completely of the project, which is about $35 million, and I think Mr. Vixos already has the numbers. So you reduce that from the 165, now you're down to $130 million. So that's about a $40 million difference. The bonding capacity of the port, we have the capacity to do it. Now, how do we pay for the movement? And the movement, I guarantee you, of the bridge is a lot less than what it would cost to demolish it and the tunnel, because I think we've spoken to the Corps of Engineers and there's different ways to actually decommission the tunnel without demoing it. So, you know, if we save just 30 out of the 35, we still had 45 million, well within our bonding capacity. Now we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And we're not looking to toll the Belle Chase Bridge. We're looking to use that $40 million of finance to build the Belle Chase Bridge. But we're taking an existing historical bridge and relocating it at the same time to Walker Road, tolling that bridge, and using that money to pay for the maintenance of both bridges and for the and for the cost of the bond. Now, we ran the numbers, and $40 million, and, you know, thanks to Mr. Scarsoni, gave me a quick figure at 25 cents. Now, I know it's a different bridge, but even at 25 cents on the Walker Road Bridge, the numbers he gave me for the Belchase Bridge, if you use those numbers for the Walker Road Bridge and just say cut it in half, you still would generate $5 million in revenue projected annually over 30 years. That $5 million, the price of the bond itself is only $3.3 million. That leaves us with the rest of the money to actually do the maintenance. So, as crazy as it may sound, and it was just an idea that I decided to take to the Secretary of Transportation and ask him what he thought about it. And because I want to do my due diligence to give the best options for this parish to get what we deserve, which is a new bridge, get rid of the tunnel, and stick with the current Plaquemines Parish transportation plan, which is the Walker Road project, and kill two birds with one stone and have the port champion this project. So I asked him to remove plenary from that P3, keep it as a P3, keep in line with the infogrant regulations, and let us, this council, as the sole governing authority of the port, make the determinations on how much the toll is going to be, or if it fluctuates, or whatever else, on Walker Road. Give us that authority. Give us that power. Take it out of the state's hands. Because the port has the capability by law, by state law, to do so. So I thank Paul and I thank Sandy for coming up there and spending 2 hours with me, with the secretary. And that's where I stand on it. And I think that's a pretty good idea. It might not work, but hey, you know what? It's the only idea I've seen. I hope that answers anybody's questions. That's all I have. I hope that answers your question.
It enlightened me because, you know, I had no idea what was going on, but thank you for your comments.
Any other comments from the table? Audience? Come to the mic, please. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Donald Valet, 109 Nancy Court, Jesuit Bend. For your information, I'm also, one of my business ventures that I've owned High Point Shooting Grounds for the last 25 years that we have been on Walker Road. We've watched everything on Walker Road. We've been involved with Walker Road, from the bridge, the planning, the master planning for the parish, et cetera. My education and my job, I've been a banker for 20 some odd years. I've financed everything on the North Shore, most of the real estate, and the South Shore and the West Bank. I've also been in the ship repair business. We've built and repaired ocean-going vessels. I've traveled all over the world promoting this river. When we bought the ship repair company, we flew the helicopters from offshore Loop to Baton Rouge. We identified every bit of business that came into this river, where it came from, who supported, who controlled it, and what were the ancillary services from it. And we went after that business. We were very competitive. We also tried to buy Avondale Shipyard. We looked at that. We're involved in the port. I've been friends with the Port Commission in Orange Parish and a few of the ports up and down the river. I've been involved in historic properties. I still own a lot of properties in the city, and I'm on a couple of boards in Baton Rouge, one of which that I represent, Plaquemines Parish, for affordable housing. Having said all that to you, I believe in good government. And I've known Sean Wilson. I've dealt with two directors of the transportation departments over the years. I'm 75 years old. I've been involved in politics all my life. My grandfather was mayor of New Orleans for 26 years. My other grandfather was Supreme Court justice. So I believe in good government and the right thing to do. What I'm still hearing today from you all, and don't misunderstand me, it's confusing to the public as well when I've talked to a lot of people. Mr. Black, I commend you for what you did. I can tell you, you had a tough time in Baton Rouge trying to get a straight answer out of most of the people. You're all still confused as what you're doing. We looked at this thing many years ago with the administration that was here and decided to alleviate the amount of traffic that was going through the bridges now and through downtown Belchase. It was always anticipated that the bypass, which was a Walker Road extension, would take the heavy traffic through the other way and out to the major arteries. It was planned. I mean, it wasn't just overnight that somebody decided this. It was long stay. I've watched the railroad maps. I've got every map and aerials showing all the railroads could come through this parish. I've looked at all the Port Commission and I've talked to people about moving here, and it all goes down to rail. What service do we have? What can we provide to people? I've been all over the world. I've been to Greece, I've been to Turkey, I've been to China, I've been to the UK, Scandinavia. I can tell you why people want to come here or don't want to come here, and I'm more than happy to convey that. But here we are again. What should be done at this point in time, if you're going to build a bridge, we got one on the way. The right-of-ways have been acquired. The road's been paved on Walker Road up to a certain extent and a curve. The right-of-ways on the other side have been paid for. All we left is that there was a 2-lane bridge going over the canal. It was 2 lanes and it was cost $60 million when it was anticipated. We all knew it was going to cost more than that before it got finished, and that's just inevitable what goes on in construction. But it was a fixed cost. At the same time, while that was being done, it gave the parish abilities to think about and plan into its master plan a road in excess. How we service the people that we have, the amount of traffic that after the storm has occurred, I can tell you it's horrendous coming down Belle Chase Highway. If you have a plant turnaround, count the cars. Some people estimate 30,000 cars a day. I think it's more than that. It's unbelievable. What you're doing in this plan about redoing this bridge with a toll doesn't alleviate any traffic. You haven't done anything. I mean, it's grand. Everybody wants a new bridge. I want a new car. I like a new house. Can I afford it? No. I'm happy where I am. I live within my means. The parish has limited access and limited income that you have right now, and it's only going to get worse with coming unless we go after economic development. Nothing we're doing with this bridge is in creating any more economic development to this parish. Kurt, I appreciate you're doing an excellent job, by the way. It's tough. Okay, none of this is easy in government. What I think we need to do, and I think Bo's on the right direction. I'm not saying that's the way to go. You need to put together a public-private, if you want to call it, group to determine what we need and what we need in the study with the engineers, with the statistical data that we have, and the financial aspect of what we have. I've done this for years. My specialty is taking over problem companies, looking at them, bringing assets into it and turning them around. But what we're sitting here with is, this bridge is already under construction for all practical purposes. Walker Road is going forward. The only thing that's holding up is my understanding, and you all talked to the secretary the other day, there's money available coming this coming year that could be to finish Walker Road. So when Walker Road's getting finished, now you're diverting a lot of traffic, taking the congestion that's going to be off with when there is and if there's a bridge to be built there, and off of Woodland Highway. No one's addressed what we're going to do with Woodland Highway. It's a tremendous thing. We have traffic problems. And unless we address the big picture with finances, and I can tell you, I've known Mr. Rousseau a long time. Stuart, I've known you, all this stuff. Y'all are good stewards of this parish. Everybody has good things in mind. But somebody jumped the gun, grabbed this $45 million the feds had, and said, let's run with it. Well, sometimes I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. But back up a little bit. It's not always good. Slow it down. Let's get Walker Road finished. Now we got something going. We got different traffic. We can take the heavy traffic out of parish. Push the railroad that you all are talking about. I've seen the map plans. I've watched it. Not only does it help Plaquemine, it helps Jefferson Parish. It helps all the other parishes eliminate a major problem. And it gives you what you need for that port. Okay? There's big.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you got 2 minutes. You didn't have 10. You're supposed to only have 3. So you did come to a closure.
I can come to a closure. I could talk all day.
I know. That's why.
I'm retired.
Well, then sit down and rest yourself.
Don't ever put a retired person on your board.
Yeah.
And our boards I serve on in Baton Rouge, we don't look retired. Anyway, slow down a little bit, guys. Look and see what you're doing. That's going to affect everybody. Look, 45 cents in, you're going to kill one person, but that's not the end of it. You don't take a situation where you have no control on the cost of this bridge, a P3, it's terrible, okay? I'll cut off at that point.
Thank you very much. Any more comments from the audience? You want to talk? Mr. Russell?
Thank you for your comments, and I'm going to reserve the rest of my comments for my item on the agenda when we get to that on the council meeting.
Okay.
Elton Frederick, 108 Victor's Road, Belchase, or Belchash, I'm sorry. From what I understand, I don't know if this is time to talk about it, but the $45 million from the federal government for the Belchase Bridge, that's part of President Trump's what is it, public-private partnership plan or whatever, and the only way we're gonna get that grant is if we go with this public-private thing with the toll on the bridge, you know, and from what I understand, the council sent a letter to the governor about maybe, I guess, getting that grant without, or, you know, getting this state money, I guess, without having to, you know, get this 45 million. But anyway, I was just saying maybe sending a letter to the governor is maybe not the right place. Shouldn't we, you know, try to get Senators Kennedy and Cassidy or Representative Steve Scalise and try to get them to give us the federal money, that 45 million federal money, you know, talk to them, you know, on the federal side without having to, you know, place a toll on a bridge, you know, that with this public-private partnership that, you know, I kind of feel is kind of I don't know, I don't want to say scam, but, you know, I'd like to know how much money they donated to the Trump campaign. You know, and they're the only ones that, you know, applied for this, you know, I mean. But anyway, I'm just saying maybe we should try to get, like I said, get Senators Cassidy and Kennedy and Scalise and see if maybe we can get that 45 million without having to, you know, go through this public-private partnership. And also, like Councilman Black was saying, his idea, I don't think that's going to work. You know, without we'd have to get this 45 million. You know, we'd still have to go through that public-private thing and pay the tolls. I'm not sure, but that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Anybody else from the audience? Councilman Black?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to reserve, Vic, I don't know if we want to reserve, Mr. Russo has an agenda item, and I think we're going to have a lengthy, open discussion. At that time, I'm going to respectfully ask Mr. Bartholomew to table this into that, but I just want to answer his question, because you do have a presentation. That's going to be up to the chairman and Mr. Russo what they want to do, but let me answer his question real quick.
I'm just confused whether I come up now or later, that's all.
Yeah, I would, later, yeah, later.
Come up under the council,
Yeah.
because we're dealing strictly with the port aspect. And to see like we're going a little further beyond what the port is doing at this point in time.
You want me to respond to this question, or you want me to wait till later?
Well, whatever's to your pleasure, sir.
All right, yeah, I'll respond to it real quick, take a minute. So basically, sir, the meeting I had with Secretary Wilson, he could not give me a definitive answer on whether or not the infra grant has to be affiliated with a toll. As far as the P3 goes, my proposal was to remove plenary from the equation and insert the port. So you'd still have that P3 type of process, which doesn't really make that much of a difference there. It's the toll aspect in regards to the infra grant. On my way back, I called President Lapine and got on a conference call with him. He sent a subsequent official memo to the Secretary's office and his attorney's office asking for all copies related to the infra grant application so we can go through the infra grant and to make our own determination whether or not it is associated or tied to a toll. The second thing is we had a conference call yesterday, myself, Dr. Gould, Mr. Matthews, the president, Mr. Sanders, and asked, Mr. Sanders had asked Mr. Vitter, who works for Mercury, who's our lobbyist in D.C., to ask the congressional delegation and ask the folks who in Department of Transportation at the federal level to make sure that those restrictions haven't been loosened so we can actually use the infra grant in different ways and determine if it's not for a toll. I think that the Secretary of Transportation is going to move forward to the Joint Transportation Committee in a couple weeks. I'm willing to go testify against the particular proposal in that P3 plan, because we do have an alternative solution, I think, and we want the due diligence to be done by them to give us the infogrant application and Mr. Vitter to come back to us from the congressional delegation and see what options we have. I don't think but I just don't want to lose the 45. I want to make sure that we're doing all things necessary to make sure that we can keep it, and maybe they'll loosen the restrictions on it. We don't even know what the restrictions are. And so I hope that answers your question. We don't know. We're doing everything in every avenue we can to get that question answered. Because obviously we haven't had a lot of, direct answers. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman LaFrance?
Also been speaking to people to try to address the shortage on this bridge. Speaking to Mr. Turner, he has a proposal that he would like to discuss. Mr. Turner?
I think you should address that at the council, when it comes up at the council meeting.
It'd be better?
Yeah,
All right.
because that's what it's coming back up, discuss with the council proposal for the bridge. No, I cannot, sir. We're in the port meeting. We're in the port meeting. Any other items? Next item, please.
Financial report, budget to actual.
Yeah, nothing to report at this meeting. We'll have it ready for the following meeting.
There are no bids and advertisements. Number 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions.
Anyone, Mr. LaFrance, you have an audience?
No, sir.
Anybody? I have one. The resolution authorizing Menard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemine Port Harbor Terminal District, to enter into a memorandum agreement with the U.S. Army of Engineers in New Orleans District concerning the provision and the funds pursuant to Section 2106 of Water Resource Reform and Development Act of 2014, and otherwise to provide respect thereto. That's all I have. Next item, please.
Number 6, ordinances and resolutions on second and final passage. There are none. Number 7, new business. There are no introduction of resolutions where suspension is being sought. Number 8, approval of the July 25th, 2019 meeting minutes.
So offered.
Been offered by Councilman LaFrance, seconded by Mr. Roussel. Machine is open.
Councilmember Newberry.
Passes 9-0. Move to adjourn. Mr. Roussel moved to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Black. Machine is open. The meeting is adjourned. It passes. The meeting's adjourned at 1:37. Thank you.